The pressure to create more, do more, and achieve more feels so constant, from our jobs to our clients, even our families. But the result of this is often feeling burnt out, defeated, and like you're losing passion for being a creative in the first place. After years of being a creative, I have felt this at every level, until I built a 4-part system to be able to create more without burning out. And now I've tripled my creative output, and I have built a creative business that makes me millions while working less. If you want to fix the feeling of burnout and create more, this is the proven system that will help you get there. Step 1 is understanding why burnout actually happens, because most people have it wrong. If you're procrastinating and burnt out from something that used to be your creative passion, the reason is probably more than laziness. When I was working in-house on a creative team where management kind of treated us like infinite content factories, I snapped one day. I pushed back on a senior marketing manager. I told her, look, if what you want from us is a creative factory, 15 outputs a day for the rest of time, just say that. Don't act like we're here to do great thinking and then funnel us into a production line. She did not take that well. The rest of the creative team did, though, because it was the sentence that nobody had been willing to say out loud. That's the environment most creatives are operating in, this constant demand for ideas, no recovery window, and the knowledge that when you finally put something up on a screen in that conference room, people are going to weigh in on it based entirely on what they like and don't like. No expertise, no shared criteria, just preference. While you, the person who made every deliberate decision in that work, sit there and take notes. Now, over 52% of creators report burnout. And when you trace it back, the leading driver is not hours logged, it's lack of satisfaction with the work itself. Creatives often land in their jobs the exact same way. They have a talent, someone agrees to pay them for it, and the job seems close enough to what they actually want to do. Then, in the job, they find out they are mostly executing someone else's vision with almost no input on what that vision is. They did not sign up for this. They thought they were taking a creative role. But money is now involved, mortgage or rent, whatever it is, so they just keep going. Junior creatives have it the worst. They fought hard to get their foot in the door, and once they're in, they will tolerate almost anything not to lose it. Work longer for less pay, absorb more. 55% of content creators cite financial instability as a top burnout driver, and for in-house creatives, the gap is just as real. A junior copywriter will consistently earn less than almost any other junior level role in the same organization. Now you stack that with perfectionism, which is extremely common among creative professionals, and you've got someone who cares deeply about quality bebeing evaluated publicly by people with no shared definition of quality. Then they go home and they're still a creative at home. There's no clocking out from that identity. Unlike most jobs, it doesn't end when the laptop closes. That combination is what produces depletion and burnout. And depletion and burnout is a very different thing from being tired. Now, before any system can help you, you need to identify which pressure point is actually running you down. So chronic volume with no recovery time is a different problem than a lack of autonomy. Lack of autonomy is different from perfectionism spiraling every time a review resets the clock. Unclear direction from leadership is different from financial struggles. And once you identify what is really causing your burnout, then you'll know which system will help you tackle it. System 1 is the DRC loop. That is the dreamer to realist to critic loop. And it comes from the way that Disney built its internal creative process. So Disney is massively successful, in part because they built these 3 separate rooms for their creative process. When Walt Disney was developing Disneyland, he physically separated the 3 modes of creative thinking: one for dreaming, one for executing, and one for critiquing. One room's only job was to generate ideas with 0 constraints attached. Another room's job was to figure out how to actually build those ideas, and the third was to pressure test them before anything moved forward. And these worked because the work of each one fed the next. But most creative pros don't have access to this system and instead spend almost all of their time in the realist room where execution happens. Someone else, a creative director, a client, leadership, they do the dreaming. They hand over a brief. The creative then executes. Then the critic role gets picked up by a different set of people, usually an internal team or a client without creative training, who evaluate based on whether the output feels right to them. When they don't love it, the creative goes back to the realist room and starts all over. That cycle is where a lot of careers plateau and then quietly collapse. The issue isn't that the creative is bad at their job. It's that they've been locked into one room, one mode for so long that the other two seem impossible to enter. They have stopped practicing ideation because ideation was never asked of them. They've stopped developing a critical framework because that belongs to whoever sits above them on the org chart. What the Disney system forces you to recognize is that if execution is the only mode you're ever in, execution will eventually hollow you out. You have to find ways to move through all three, even when your job description only asks for one. So, in your next conversation with your creative director or manager, just ask to get involved earlier in that dreaming phase, the concept stage. Put your hand up for assignments where the idea isn't handed to you, even when they say no, and they will. Ask again later, and again and again. You are allowed to ask for things that are tied to your career and that will prevent your professional burnout. Also, put yourself in the critic position. Peer reviews, internal critique sessions, any situation where you're taking someone else's work and trying to bring it into its strongest form rather than just building it. Moving through all three rooms, the roles of dreamer, realist, and critic, is what keeps the work from feeling like a single, endless task. That's the system. You don't wait to be given access to all three. You create the situations that let you practice each one. System 2 is called floors in the skyscraper, and it addresses one of the most common creative traps: the belief that producing more requires starting from scratch more often. You're probably starting over every time. Now, we taught this model to freelancers for years. Before publishing daily became an expectation, the best content creators were building what used to be called skyscraper content. So that was one comprehensive, deeply researched piece that became the authoritative resource on a topic. Then they broke it apart, made a bunch of smaller pieces out of that one big piece, like the floors of the skyscraper, hence the system's very literal name, floors in the skyscraper. The key distinction is that this was not repurposing. They were pulling distinct angles from the same core piece, each one able to stand alone, pushed out across different channels, so each piece drove traffic to the others. One thorough piece of thinking generated a month's worth of rich content, and all of it worked together. Today, you can take that even further by adding in a ton of short-form video. The exhaustion that comes from content volume is almost always a process problem, not a creativity problem. When you're expected to generate entirely original content on a constant cycle, new idea, new angle, new everything every time, you're asking yourself to build a different structure from the ground up every single week. Nobody does their best thinking when they're already mentally behind on the next thing. The pillar model, the skyscraper technique, changes the equation of creative output. You put serious time into one cornerstone piece, maybe once a month, maybe once a quarter even, and then you break it into distinct pieces. So test this out the next time you roll out another piece of content. Pick one topic you know well enough to build a whole skyscraper out of and spend a serious amount of time on that one substantial piece. Go deep, get thorough, go crazy. Then list every distinct angle embedded in that piece. Each of those angles becomes a separate piece of content. Each one goes to a different channel, different format. You publish across 4 to 6 weeks. Then at the end of that cycle, you have produced a body of work that compounds rather than resets. You spend less time starting from nothing and more time drawing on what's already there. System 3 is the love-hate litmus test, and it is probably the most uncomfortable thing I'm going to say in this video because it goes directly against what most creatives are conditioned to want when they present in front of a room. A book published recently called Pattern Breakers uses research into what drives breakthrough ideas to determine that consensus is a warning signal. So when everyone in a room agrees something is great, it's almost always because the idea sounds familiar. The brain relaxes when it encounters a pattern it has seen before. Now that feeling of familiarity gets read as quality, and the whole room nods and agrees. My agency, we call this the breakthrough or bust, or the Bob principle, and the data behind it, both from published research and from my own experience working with clients across creative and marketing contexts, it all points in the same direction. When you present work and the opinion in the room splits roughly in half, you probably have something worth developing. Because when half the room doesn't love something, they're responding to tension in the idea, something that breaks a pattern they expected, something that reads differently than they've seen before. And the same can be true for those who love it. They too may see something unexpected or unfamiliar in it, and they like that. When the room reaches full agreement, You should be more skeptical of the idea, not less. Unanimous approval almost always means the idea is familiar enough for everyone to agree on. Familiar ideas don't make anyone look twice. They are a waste of money. Now, for creatives, this is a huge insight that, when shared in a boardroom, can help give the creative team more autonomy, not less. The hardest part of the system for creatives is that when everyone loves the work, it actually feels like a relief, especially for anyone who runs on perfectionism. The whole room said, yes, that's supposed to be the goal. But if you've gotten there, you may have given away the edge. So stop treating review sessions as approval processes. You're there to collect data, not validation for your work. When you present work and the room splits, yay. That's a green light signal to refine further in the direction of the tension, not to sand the idea down until both sides can agree on it. That kind of refinement kills it. Familiar, comfortable ideas that everyone likes do not break through in the marketplace, which is saturated with those. And when you're revising, keep asking, does this still divide the room? If everyone is starting to converge toward yes, track what changed. The thing you softened to get there is usually the thing that was making it work. Remember that it's called the love-hate litmus test because we want both love and hate for the idea, not neutrality. System 4 is the copy selling system, and it addresses what burns out creatives, from marketers to copywriters to creative directors, even founders, faster than anything else. And that is guesswork. The creative teams that burn out the fastest all have one thing in common. These creative teams aren't the ones doing the most work. They're the ones doing the most work with no clear measure of what good actually means. I've been in enough boardrooms to know what happens when a team has no real system for figuring out what to say in their marketing or for their brand. Someone throws out an idea, someone else throws out a different idea. The most senior person in the room eventually has their message idea win because, let's be honest, in these settings, rank matters more than validity or customer insight. The creative team leaves with new notes. Those notes contradict the notes from last time. They go back and start over on something they've already revised 3 times. This is the cycle of creative death. This is the heart of burnout. We need a system to counter it. When someone comes to you and says they want more traffic, that is a wish, not something you can really work with. What you need is a brief, something tangible. They need to bring you the constraint. The copy selling system starts with constraint identification. The constraint is the bottleneck or what's broken in your marketing funnel. It is the specific, diagnosable gap where potential customers are dropping off, a sort of customer creation assembly line. You find the constraint through real analysis of your existing content or your funnel. Now, if the marketing team wants more traffic, you partner with AI or with your internal analyst to find what is constraining traffic growth or throughput. The whole point of the system is to remove guesswork at every stage where guesswork currently lives. That's what makes it a system and not just a better brief. And that's what turns creative work from an endurance test into something that's actually repeatable. Here's how this constraint-centric system works. With AI now, the constraint analysis takes hours instead of weeks. You can run a content audit in an afternoon with something like Claude. Now, this would have taken a full team 2 weeks to do manually. What you come up with is a real constraint. Maybe you need more long-form video driving organic YouTube traffic. Maybe you need short-form listicles that AI search or AEO surfaces well. Specific, directional, actionable. From there, you move into the solution design, which is a way more precise and useful version of a brief. Then comes the listening phase. This is where, instead of brainstorming what to say in your copy, you go to your voice of customer data, your reviews, your survey responses, and you pull the actual language your buyers use when they describe things like their problems or what they want. Now, across the entire customer journey, customers are sharing what they're going through. So you don't need to guess, you just need to listen. Their language goes into a message matrix, which is a map of copy to use at every stage of a prospect's decision process. This is where guessing goes away. The message matrix and solution design then feed that first draft. Now, with AI to help out, creatives are no longer like grinding through early stage groundwork or guessing what to say and how to say it. Creatives have now got a map of what to say and when. So now they're applying their actual expertise to something that has structure and direction. The guesswork goes away and their genius can shine through. The copy selling system is based on decades of research and is grounded in what has worked best over the years. The full framework, how to build the message matrix, what goes into a solution design, and how to run this as a repeatable workflow that your whole team can use is all in my book, The Copy Selling System, which has been praised by the likes of April Dunford, Bob Mesta, and Dan Martell. I think you'll like it. The link to the book is in the description. Now that you've got a handle on the systems that can prevent your burnout as a creative, you should watch this next video on how to sell anything as a creative.